Welcome back to the Dispatch from WPRB News. Besides the Academy, some of the other biggest shapers of American policy towards China sit at the intersection of Congress, K Street, and big business. Our next guest, Ken Silverstein, is the Washington editor for Harper's magazine and author of Turkmenistan: How Washington Lobbyists Fought to Flack for a Stalinist Dictatorship. He wrote about how China policy gets formed in the August issue of Harper's. Ken, welcome.
Thank you.
So we're talking one day before the election here, and there are a lot of different policy issues that the campaigns disagree on, but one that they seem to agree on, in large part anyway, is U.S. policy towards China. Why haven't we seen a bigger difference between the parties on that issue?
Well, it's interesting because China is just not a campaign issue, which is really striking, or the absence of it as a campaign issue is striking. And if you go back to the late 1980s and into the certainly the 1992 election, it was a central issue, whereas the entire U.S. relationship with China was one of the most hotly debated topics. You had Bill Clinton accusing George Bush Sr. of coddling dictators and promising to honor the spirit of Tiananmen Square, and yeah, it was just extremely hotly debated. Then you had, after Clinton took office, there was an enormous national debate, not quite the scale of NAFTA, but it was along those lines in terms of should China be granted permanent most favored nation trade status, which in the end it was after a very, very expensive lobbying campaign launched by American corporations who do business over there. That was a narrowly won victory, and Clinton reversed himself and went ahead and signed that legislation, supported that legislation. So, the fact that China is just not an issue is striking, and I think in part it's because there's a consensus, at least at sort of the national, the foreign policy establishment, basically is an agreement that China is too important a country to risk the relationship, just in terms of trade and investment. That the issue of human rights, which used to be debated all the time as how important should human rights be in terms of formulating our China policy, that it's just now the consensus is it's not important enough to really matter, and that the China policy needs to be focused on trade and investment. So as basically the business community side of the debate won out, especially with the China winning permanent favored trade nation status, and as investment has increased and as China has become sort of more, incorporated is the wrong term because China is a huge economy, but as it's become a sort of central figure, a more important figure in the whole broader American international economic policy, the debate has just sort of disappeared. Everybody's in favor of what is called engagement with China.
And engagement seems to be really the buzzword. What exactly does that entail?
Well, in theory, what it means is, these carrots are offered to China, that China gets all the economic benefits of a normal trade relationships with the United States, and then that there's going to be, in exchange for that, political engagement and political opening and liberalization on the part of Beijing. I guess I would cite here, I did a recent piece for Harper's called The Mandarins, and I cited a Professor Perry Link, who was at Princeton until recently, and what he said to me is that he was all for engagement, but the question, as he put it, is, do you engage exclusively with the Communist Party leaders, or is there a broader engagement? And I'm quoting him still here. When people like Henry Kissinger talk about engagement, they mean black tie affairs with top government and business leaders, and those leaders are quite a different case from the great majority of the Chinese people. And I think that's an important point. Engagement tends to take place at the upper echelons, but the benefits of engagement, to the extent that there are benefits, I think have been concentrated at the upper echelons. The Chinese leadership has entrenched itself as a result of economic growth, and there is a sort of elite and high-end middle class that's emerged in China, but the benefits of engagement have been very, very concentrated. If you're a Chinese peasant, not to say that life hasn't changed in the last 20 years, it has, but certainly not in the same ways that it has for the leadership and the sort of the emerging intellectual and political class. So I think that the problem is that the benefits of engagement have been fairly narrowly spread. It's not, again, to say that only the rich have benefited, because China has changed greatly, but the benefits of trade and investment with the United States, and just the benefit of China sort of shedding its pariah status, and it really was a virtual pariah some 20 years ago, have been enormous, and most of that has accrued to the leadership.